Hello, everybody. It's Wednesday again. Thank God. And it's 9 o'clock here in Ireland, in the UK, 10 o'clock in France. Good to have you all here with us today. And today's topic is what is good and what is evil. What is good and what is evil? Important topic for us. Um, this this is gonna be a long conversation. So today we don't have any video. So just stay tuned with us. And good evening, Miss Gibbons. How are you, my dear?
Good evening, Charles and Stevan. Good evening, everyone who's with us. All is well, thank God. And looking forward to this conversation today because I think it's a theme that is very much in our minds in the last few weeks and everything. So let's see what Spiritism teaches us and reminds us about this theme, and so it'll be very interesting. And if anyone like to ask questions or put a point, it would be nice as well to hear from them. So um, let's say that hopefully you're going to have a really good meeting and very enlightening as always. That's all.
Yeah, yeah. Bonsoir, Charles.
Bonsoir, Steven. Hello, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Marco and Rodrigo, who are connected already. Very happy to be here again with you to talk about this subject, which is quite interesting, isn't it? What is good, what is evil, what is bad? What is a referential for that? Because sometimes we think we are doing good, but without willing, we are doing bad. So there is the things are depending a little bit on our understanding. So let's try to clarify all these questions tonight.
Great, great. So first things first. Um I came across to a lot of let's say non-Brazilian friends here in Ireland. Non-Brazilian because they're not from Brazil. They have Irish friends. We have Spanish, French. So all these friends who came to visit the Spirit Center here, and I can say great part of these brothers and sisters, they were angry with God. Oh, because God, if God is good, why he allowed my dad drink like that? Why he allowed someone kill my granddad in name of the Protestant church and the other for the Catholic church? I'm talking about the fight between Protestant and Catholic here in Belfast. Why he allowed this? Why he didn't just will and say, "Hey, don't let not do this. Let not this child suffer. Let not this family suffer." Most of them, if we can put in one single basket, that's the main questions. They are always pointing out to their bad episodes in their lives, which it is a open wound for them, to be honest. And they are pointing out the thing and say, hey, if God is good, if God is love, if God is all this, why he didn't intervene here? Why he didn't make any difference here for me? So my first question to us to debate here is it is this one. If God is love, if God is all these we always say here, we listen everywhere. Why he allow this uh, uh, um, this this happen? That happen. So let's start with Charles.
Hmm. Good question, isn't it?
It is a
God
trick
is really
one.
love. God is infinite mercy, infinite justice, and accordingly, He has given to the human being something very special, which is called the free will. So every human, we know that our spirit, as human spirit, has been created by God, simple and without science. And ignorant means without science. And uh, one of the attributes we have is the faculty to progress infinitely, and also the free will. So, according to this free will, everyone is progressing according to his own decisions, to his own efforts. We are free to decide whatever we want. And this free will is really something which is absolutely fundamental in the human being, and which, by the way, is differentiating the human being from, for instance, the animals. Human has free will, and animals, they are more driven by something else, which is called instinct. So we see here a huge difference. Of course, humans have also a little bit of instinct, and the animals are already showing some influence of their will, of the character, and so on. So it's a transition. Nothing is really black or white. It's moving, progressing progressively. And why is there evil in humanity, in the world? Exactly because we have this free will. If we have the free will, we are free to select to do something good, but we are also free to select to do something evil. Otherwise, we would not have the free will, correct? And when we do something bad, and we suffer the consequences of this, because that's another law coming from this infinite justice of God, which is the law of cause and effect, or the law of action and reaction. We do something good or bad, we get back something accordingly good or bad. I always give the same example. If we do not care and we with the hammer we hit on our finger, it's not something good, isn't it? But what's happening then? There is a law of cause and effect. You have the natural laws which are acting. It's not God punishing. It's just the natural laws which are the same for everyone and everybody. Another attribute of another sign of this infinite justice of God. When we hit our finger with the hammer, there is some blooding internally, and the nerves and whatever. We feel the pain, and then we are blue or whatever, and we suffer the consequences of what we have done. And this is how we are learning. We do something bad, we suffer the consequences. So we learned, okay, this is not good because the consequences really are not good for me. And that is how we learn. It's helping us to learn what is good and what is bad, to learn about these natural laws. Okay. And so the bad, the evil, or the people killing, or the wars, as you mentioned, Stevan, is simply the consequences of our limited evolution as human being. It is the consequences of the bad things we still have in us, like selfishness, like pride, like we think we are better than the other, or we want the things from the other, and so on. That's why we have wars. That's why we have people being killed. So the evil is really still the reflection of our imperfection. But Sooner or later, we learn. A lot of people, human people here on Earth, have learned already. They don't do evil and so much anymore. They don't kill anyone anymore. They don't even kill an animal or nothing. They have a deep respect for all what is nature, for instance. And some others are less evolved, and they still are making some mistakes that which we may have evolved a little bit, made the same mistakes a lot sometime in the past. So we see this law of liberty is really one of the key attributes of the human being, and it's also a key to explain or to foster in some certain way our evolution. uh. And the learning is done by, okay, we made the mistake, we learn from the mistake, and we avoid doing the same mistake again. This is how we learn what is good and what is evil. Of course, that's not the only way. There are a lot of people, missionaries like Jesus, like others, who are coming and tell us and show us, look,
Mhm.
do unto the other what you would like the other to do unto you. Look what a wonderful criteria Jesus brought. You do something to someone. Would you like really someone to do that unto you? If the answer is no, so don't do it to the other. It's also a very clear and simple and powerful criteria for us to make the difference between good and evil and to orient our behavior. So that's just to introduce a little bit the subject.
Great, my dear. Thank you, my friend. Is Gibbons. Um, okay, Charles have a good point. But in that case, newborn suffering is abandoned by the mom. I don't know. The dad was drunk and for some reason he killed the mom and he's got end up in a went to adoption and have a miserable life. What's what's your thoughts about it?
Well, it's first of all that is a very sad thing that this kind of things still happen in a world, and we have experienced enough and have lived through enough not to have those kind of things happening. It's still very sad. But because of the nature of a planet, that the level that we still are in it spiritually, things like this does happen because that new baby who's being born, a new life starting out, is in reality a very old spirit. And it might be that it's coming to a corporeal life to readdress some wrongs that they've done in the past. And this can be part of the experience that spirit who at that point is a child might have a choice for themselves to what kind of
Mhm.
lessons to learn. It might be quite usually in situations like that, uh, the father and the mother, both of them were old enemies, but because they were in situations together and for whatever reason they come together, they, some of them is compulsory almost to be the parents of that child coming into the world. So they, this child either come to unite them or to help them and to help themselves. And the three of them should be in a life that one would help the other, because as a child you're totally dependent on your parents. And I think human beings, of all the species of creatures on earth, the human beings are the ones who take longest, um, that needs the help of parents, the father and mother, until quite a long time. Most of animals, they are born, and almost some of them, almost soon after they are born, they already can free themselves.
Good
Others will
point.
take a little longer, but but human beings know. human beings need to be with their parents for a long time. And we know that at this early age, when the spirit is developing, is coming into this new life, that's very flexible. It's easier to not manipulate. That's not the word. It's easier to deal with, to teach them different things. And people who have children know that if you have 2, 3 children, 4 children, as many as you have, each and every one have a completely different personality, almost from the moment they are born. So because they are individual spirits coming to be born in that family. And as parents, they have their responsibility to educate them, to guide them, to help them, to show them the right and wrong, and to really make sure that they learn certain principles. And this is very important. I mean, in a case, as you suggested, Steven, that child will probably, maybe brought up by the mother, if she's there, or maybe she's not there, as one of the purpose you said. They will either be brought up by a member of the family or by someone they know, or a lot of them will go to, orphanage and things like that. And that life is going to be a lot harder, although some children have very, very hard lives with parents. And to give an example, very brief example, what I'm saying, there was a book that was published some years ago called Eat. I don't know if you ever heard about this book. It's called A Child Called Eat. And this man,
IT.
IT, yes, Eat. He tells his story. He wrote about his experience. He was an American, and he was born in a family of 4 children. He was one of the 4 children. I think he had 2 sisters and a brother or something. And his mother tortured him for years. She wouldn't feed him. She wouldn't bathe him. She would hide him. She would beat him up. She would abuse him of all sorts of physical abuse, mental abuse, and this lasted for a long time. I think he was about 9 years old when a teacher in his school actually saw, I can't remember very well because I read this many years ago now, but I think a children in the school saw him looking for food in the rubbish bin. And she asked, what are you doing? Didn't you eat? So his mother wouldn't give him money to buy food. So he had to, find things. And anyway, the teacher went to find out. And eventually, they have the authorities and all kind of things. But you see, the other children was all right. He was the one, that the mother mistreated, and the father worked, and the father was in the family. He hadn't disappeared. He was in the family, and he was working, but he, for some reason, he never really noticed the difference between the other children and this boy. So anyway, eventually he said, and he more or less, he had to be taken away from the family, and he had the treatment and he had therapy. And eventually, he wrote the book to tell his story and to say he actually forgave his mother for what she had done, and of course, everybody, is a horrible person, and I can't personally imagine a mother being cruel. But we know it exists, as a therapist, you see it many, many times, unfortunately. But if we see the extension beyond all the situations, they probably were very, very tough, very hardcore enemies from the past who were whatever, either was in a compulsory way or they chose to be born as mother and son. He depended on her, And the spiritual lessons that would come from this, you have better understand of this, and that's what spiritism teaches us, this kind of difficulties that sometimes we don't know what it was in the past, only God knows. So I think one of the points of the we're talking about today, the nature of good and evil, is that we usually judge every situation by our own perspective, by our own knowledge or experience, especially experience of life, uh, and other people, but God sees beyond. And I think if in that case, in that situation, it was I think he wrote 2 or 3 books, I think, going through to the story as it developed for him. He was able to forgive his mother. So in a way, I mean, spiritually speaking, he he achieved what he was born to do, which was, make an enemy into a friend by all the situation that he went through and everything. So and I mean, even psychologically and as a human being, he achieved something very, very special, not to hate someone, not because that hatred could have continued on. So when we think of things, sometimes certain situations, if we could see the whole picture, we would have a better understanding. Of course, not that we approve of evil or approve of people going and doing cruel things to others, that we should have been beyond that, but there is better understanding. So, it's not God, it's sometimes it's things within us that will lead us into certain situations. So,
Good. Yes, yes. It is tricky because it's difficult to understand and to see always the cup half full instead of half empty. It's for our nature to try to accommodate this. So it's time to say hello. So we have here Marco Davis, our friend Rodrigo, Tati from Spain, Lou VM. More people is coming. Let me see. Uh, Dukta Dukta Kishetti. So sorry if I said your name wrong, Dukta. Dutka. So, and Charles, I am assuming where there is good, there is no evil. Both cannot be in the same place. Is that right?
Yeah, there is one way to say that, for instance, the evil is the absence of good, like, for instance, the cold is the absence of heat. It's a way to see. Now, there are some situations where you find at the same place or within the same person some good parts and some less good parts, let's say so. So we don't. It's not like that. We are a bad person, and then poof, of a sudden we are good person.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a 0-1 logic. It is something which is progressive. So we evolve progressively, and that's why Allan Kardec made a statement which is absolutely fantastic about the spiritist, about ourselves. Is the spiritists, you do not recognize them because they are perfect persons. Not at all. You recognize them because they are doing efforts to reduce or to dominate their bad tendencies. So that is really what it is about. We are not perfect, otherwise we would not be here on this world. So we still, all of us, myself in particular, have some bad tendencies still with me. That is a daily struggle to reduce them, to get them away, and to replace them by the good, the opposite values, which is the good. So this is really what it is about. This is why we are incarnating here on Earth. This is why sometimes we have some trials, like you told this child, a child who is abandoned very young. Nothing happens by lack of chance, or nothing happens. Otherwise, God would not be infinitely just. God is infinitely just and equitable. So if we are suffering some things, it's because there is a reason why we are suffering. As I gave the example with the hammer. So I can hit with a hammer, I see the immediate consequences, but sometimes it's not so immediate. We can make a mistake in a past life, and then in the next life only we are suffering the consequences. What we need absolutely to know is God is infinitely just. So nothing happens like this. Everything is is helping us in some way to correct us about some of these bad aspects we still have in us. And the example you gave does not escape from this rule. Otherwise, the philosophy would not be consistent. God is infinitely good. So if we are suffering something, there is a good reason for us to suffer that. And indeed, it is something which is helping us to learn and to grow. This is how we should. If we would all face the problems like this, to have a problem is an opportunity to grow, I think the things would change a lot in the world, isn't it?
Good, good. Yeah, it's important for us to understand evil, it is a temporary situation. Yeah, once we understand what happened, once we act upon it, we flip, we change side. You my dear Silvia, I will read item number 5 from chapter 3 from the Genesis. Item number 5, chapter 3 from the book Genesis from Kardec.
Mhm.
The evils to which men are exposed by ignorance are a stimulant for the exercise of their intelligence, for all their moral and physical faculties, by inducing them to seek for means to shelter themselves from them. If man had nothing to fear, no necessity would incline him to seek for anything better. He would become benumbed in the inactivity of his mind. He would invent nothing and discover nothing. Pain and suffering are incentives which support men onward in the march of progress. Can I say evil is good?
Well, evil is not good, but sometimes good can come out of evil. But I think it is this chapter that you read specifically, this item that you read, because there are many different, there are two kinds of evil things. Kamal, no, Kamalatis. You know,
Calamities.
calamities. Yes, I'm sorry, my head's going. Um, calamities. It's a kind of evil. When you have um, these terrible earthquakes, volcanoes. We're seeing one happening these very times that we are living in these very days in Iceland. This volcano started and is already, beginning to take over a town and everything. A lot of things like this happen, wind and earth, uh, sea, tsunamis, and, all sorts of things. And those are things that are part of the experience, is part of the planet that's in the process of changing as well. And it happens, and a lot of people suffer. We suffer with those. And then there is the evil that's man-made. So I think in this item specifically that you read, I think mostly of it is due to natural disasters. Part of, like, we all remember, it's still very clear in all of our minds, in 2004, Boxing Day in Indonesia, where they had that tsunami that in a couple of hours wiped out over 300,000 people, with the water flowing and destroying houses and lives in many, many parts of Malaysia, and went all the way to Sri Lanka, and it was most horrendous thing. But sometimes this kind of calamities is what pushes us, what put mankind to invent things, like when you have very, very cold weather, like we are having in England at the moment.
Right now in Ireland.
It's freezing cold here, not seems to warm us up. What you invent, you invent new heaters, houses that are better protected, with the insulation in the walls, the new engineering now. It's amazing, some of the products that they are building houses now that creates, an ambient that they extract heating and is much warmer and more comfortable. So sometimes, even in, the situation I just said about Iceland, because they have all this, it happens as well, a lot of this in Japan, where because they are constantly having earthquakes and things, they have developed seismological instruments that, can more or less predict to a certain extent, of course, unfortunately not all the time, but even when the water, if there is a tsunami recently as well, I think it was in Japan, they had an earthquake somewhere in the sea and they were expecting maybe the water to come. But so they create barriers. They have early warning, so they can evacuate people from those towns where, a volcano is coming over, and all this kind of things. In fire, in case of fire, we have, helicopters and different things. So all these difficulties that sometimes happens is what creates us the ability to try to find things that are better. We build better houses, we have better roads. I mean, I remember reading about someone who was talking about this car. It used to be a series on the telly here in England, and this man, this detective, he had an old car that he really loved, and he was supposed, in a film, he was supposed to really adore this old car. And in an interview that they had with the actor, he said, I wouldn't drive their car if they paid me. I mean, they were paying him, of course, but it was just doing the film, because he said it doesn't have any kind of modern comfort that the cars have, to give you a more it's the cars now are a lot softer. You don't have this, I don't know all the names of these things, but it doesn't bump up and down, because in the old cars, remember, used to go up and down, and now they have all this kind of different things that it balances out the car. So all this kind of things is new invention. I mean, even the tube, say for instance the trains here as well now, some of the modern trains here in England, the tube, it's not closed anymore. The trains, they are open. All the cars, you can move from one car to another. It's a lot more comfortable, and it's nice and warm, and all these kind of things. So I think this difficulties, the calamities, the terrible winds and everything that we have every now and then, snowstorms, or like in the southern hemisphere, in Brazil, everybody now that I know are saying how terrible it is. It's being so hot. Last year was terribly hot, and this year's even worse. And people are really suffering with the amount of heat there and everything. So we have all these things, but it gives incentive to learn, to progress, to find new, more comfortable things. Nowadays, before you needed to, unfortunately, people had to kill animals to use their skin. When they used to have all the furs and everything. Now we don't need this anymore. We have invented new material that is light, is very light, and is extremely warm, and we are very comfortable. If we have to face, shoes are much better and everything. So those difficulties is what gives us the impulse to evolve, to learn, to discover, to improve our sciences, the desire that we have to see about the stars. We create something like the James Webb Telescope, which is changing the whole history of astronomy, in a couple of years, about a year, a few months. It is changing everything we knew about astronomy, about the universe, and is giving new insight. So, we are constantly learning, we are pushed. And whenever we have difficulties, those things are. So sometimes out of bad things, good things can happen. But with mankind, we are a lot more evil sometimes. The evil within is pride, is selfishness, is trying to just see our side of the story. And I think that's what it creates: envy, jealousy, all those things that makes us small, because we are children of God. We have within us a light that shines, but sometimes we forget about it, and we allow ourselves to be let down by our pride, our selfishness, our anger, our hatred, because my religion is better than yours, so I'm going to kill you because you don't deserve to live, because my God is better. So and I think the whole thing as well of using God for purpose of their own ambition is quite sickening, but it's happened, and that's the evil within. That's what we have to fight against, and that does not depend on God. And also the calamities, the natural phenomena that happens, is part of the process of the earth. The earth is progressing, is moving. This volcano that happened, I think, as well in Iceland. The poor things, they have this volcano is active all the time. That created, I don't know how many kilometers extra in the island. So there is always something happening. If you go around Mount Vesuvius, it's incredible the number of farms around that volcano, because it's so good. The earth there is so productive. So there are good things that happen, and as part of the process of the earth, of the growth of our planet and ourselves. But the evil that's created by ourselves, we can change. As you said, this is a passing thing, but it depends on us to make the change, to want to be different, and not accuse God for our own errors, because God made us simple and ignorant. I mean, Charles always quotes this, and we are able to learn, but sometimes we choose the wrong road. And if you choose the wrong road, you create a lot of problems, a lot of stones that you have to overcome afterwards. So God is merciful always. He's a loving Father. And if we go off as a father or as a mother, if a child does something that's totally wrong, we have to tell them off. we have to be quite hard on them, even though we love them. And I think that's what sometimes happens. But God does not punish anyone. There is no punishment in God. It's just mercy, isn't it? So I don't know. I went around. Maybe I talked too much, but
No,
um,
it's wonderful. We needed to understand. We are incarnated in a world in which we need these bad, let's say, bad moments in order to awake ourselves, in order to exercise uh, that feeling. If you who are listeners think you don't need to go to this, I'm sorry to tell you, you took the wrong bus and you get off on the wrong planet, because this is a characteristic of our planet. This this is a planet in which we need to still get rid of our vices, our selfishness, our indulgence, our bad feelings. We need to get rid of this, and we need to work with this. And the best way to do it, this is not something you just read from a book, or you go to a school and this give the subject the all the material to study. You do a test and you go. No, you need to live it. Sometimes you need to live it feeling it, like someone telling racism doesn't exist. This guy's complaining about nothing. So why don't you born different and suffer the racism to see if it is the same thing? Oh, this guy is sleeping on the street because they want to. Go you and spend one day sleeping on the street. So we need to live those experiences in order to know, oh, I don't like this, I like that. Another example, uh, we have been in many mediumistic meetings, and we saw a bunch of spirits, brothers and sisters, who just decide to change their attitude because they are sick of suffering, trying the same thing and always suffering, always being in a horrible position. And someday they say, well, let me change my attitude. I always doing this. Let me do that to see what's going on. And they learned. So this is life. Unfortunately, we cannot explain why a baby is suffering. Perhaps past life, some are spiritists and listeners say, "Oh, this is caused from past life." Yes, it's maybe one of the causes, but we don't know. And if that person decided in his reincarnatory plan to say, "Hey, I want to reborn, and I want to be an orphan. I want to live in a poverty because I need to learn this, live in there, that." We don't know. We don't know. And thank God we don't know. So, Charles, I said too much.
The only thing we know is that God is infinitely just. There is
And
no
good.
injustice in such situation. Whether it is a consequence of a past mistake or whether it's a decision we have made to go through some difficulties in order to grow, or whatever the reason is, it is something just according to justice. Because we all have this feeling of justice in us, isn't it? When we see something, an injustice somewhere, we don't like it. We react immediately, and even babies, even young people are reacting like that already, because it's inside us. It's something which is innate in us, and that's why I say the only thing we know, we can be sure of, is God is infinitely just, and this type of situations have a right, have a cause which is according to God's justice. This thing now, by lack of chance, I'm born under a bad star, or whatever the people are saying, or there are some spirits behind me hurting me, or whatever. That's too easy like this. No. And Silvia told it right. I mean, when everything is okay, we accommodate. Let's enjoy life whatsoever. We don't do efforts to grow. We do efforts to grow when we are facing difficulties. So it is a fact that difficulties are, as you have read it in this excerpt of the Genesis, difficulties are really an incentive for us to make efforts, to learn, to grow, to protect us, to prevent, to make prevention, whatever. And I think Japan, this earthquake, is a good example, because you see in Japan, you have earthquakes in some cities, Tokyo, for instance, 5, 6, 7, and okay, some things are falling into the ground, whatever, but everything has been designed, built from the beginning in order to resist to such quakes, which are, frequent and common in that area. You have some other areas in the world with quakes which are 10 times less, intense than the one in Japan, and you have a lot of people dying. And this is exactly one of the example, the human being challenged and is finding ways and solutions to make the thing better in order to avoid and to be capable to live with those quakes. The same as this volcano in Iceland. Okay, city was a little bit too close to where the risk was. And then Silvia, you told all these farms around the Vesuvio, but one day the Vesuve maybe will have an eruption again, as it happened not so long ago in Canary Island or whatever. And this is the things that we know and we need to cope with. Now, what we also see is a lot of these things. You have negative temperatures in London. We had here 10 Celsius negative yesterday. Today, 10 Celsius positive at the same time. These things are varying crazy. So you have cold snow. Next day it starts raining. Everything's melting in a couple of hours. I mean, it happened in the past, but not frequently as it happens today. And clearly, today we have also the intelligence in order to make the calculations, the simulations, and to see it is already a consequence of our human being activity, which is excessive, putting too much carbon into the atmosphere, having attitudes which are not sustainable enough, and the consequences are here. So it's another way of us to learn, to see we have to slow down a little bit our consumption, or to make it more sustainable, or to find new ways to have it cleaner or whatever, or greener or whatever. So it's another challenge that we will have to overcome. And hopefully it will help us to change a little bit our focus, to remove these blinds from the material things, material comfort, luxury, whatever, and to think a little bit, have a wider sight, also towards the spiritual things. And this is basically what our world is lacking nowadays. huh. And good and evil, the evil will, and the wars, for instance. huh, you know, there will be a point in time where the humanity will be sad, tired. We don't want wars anymore. huh?
Yeah.
And this will be also a strong incentive in order to make the war stops. And this what happened in Europe, 1870, 19 WW1, WW2, and after WW2, the people said, "Oh, stop, hang on, we cannot continue like that. Put in place some measures, okay, some dialogues, some including European community and so on." And luckily, it's now 70 years since WW2 that it is quiet. So if we want, yes, we can. It's okay, a little bit outdated, but if we want, we can. That's sure. And so it's against this free will. Let's use your will to make all these things stop, to make this evil thing stop. Let's show the example of the good, huh, of all what is more in harmony with the natural laws. That's another definition which is given between good and evil. Good is everything which is in compliance, in harmony with natural law, or you can tell also with God's law, because natural law and God's law is the same thing. And evil is all what is not in harmony with the natural law. So the referential is not the Bible, is not the Spirit's book, is not what X, Y, or Z said. It's the laws of nature themselves, the law of the universe we are living in. So clearly, we shall seek this harmony with these natural laws, and that is then working and making us move towards the good, and also to get rid slowly but surely about all these evil things. It may take some time still, but we will get there.
That's the good news. We will get there. We will get there. Again, guys, allow me to read another paragraph, but I believe this is where Kardec summarize. He will summarize for us everything what we have said. I'm still on the book Genesis. Now is the second paragraph from item 6.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah?
Go on.
So this is the second paragraph from the item 6. And for me, this is the way Kardec is summarizing for us what we have said. God has established laws full of wisdom, which are only for the good of men. All that is necessary to man's welfare is in his obedience to them. His way is traced out for him by his conscience. The divine law is engraved upon his heart. Moreover, God reminds him incessantly by his Messiah and prophets, by all incarnates who have received the mission of enlightening him, of moralizing him, of improving his condition, and in these latter days, by the multitude of discarnates who manifest on all sides. If man conformed himself rigorously to the divine laws, he would evade without doubt the several evils and would live happily upon the earth. If he doesn't obey them, it is by virtue of his free will, and he must submit himself to the consequences. Say, no religion, nothing. So anyone, Kardec already said it here, anyone who received the mission of enlightenment, so it's Buddha, Gandhi, Mother Teresa, whatever one you think was incarnated here in order to say to the humankind, hey guys, you are on the wrong way. You should take this way. But no, we still having war, we still having problems, we still doing all this, but we don't want to suffer the consequences. And it's clear here, who doesn't obey to what Charlie says, the natural law, which is the divine law, who doesn't go to this is out. It's like a rule here. Man law is different from God's law, because man law is always changeable. But if you are driving your car in a road and the speed limit for this road is 100 kilometers, if you go 150 and you got caught, you will receive a penalty. That's it. If he will stay 100 kilometers, nothing gonna happen to him.
But Steven, the real good is you don't need limitations anymore because everyone is reasonable and will drive with a reasonable speed. That will be the future.
Yeah, exactly. My dear Gibbons, what's your final conclusion? Wrap up for us.
I think, after Kardec, what can I say? But just one point.
Thank you.
That's
Good night. Nice to meet you.
God bless. No, but just one point. I think that this chapter in Genesis and the Spirit's book and everything. Just to make clear that God does not created evil, because some people say, oh, because evil, and that kind of evil that we usually, especially in churches, we think that then people almost put the devil as God, as if they are constantly fighting each other, and that's not so. God is infinite. Like Charles said, God is the supreme intelligence of the universe, the first cause of all things. God is not a man or a woman. God is the supreme intelligence of the universe, the first cause of all things, and is above. Evil is created by ourselves, through our pride, our selfishness, our desire, our ambitions, and in a way, it's not, we cannot fight with God because God is merciful. When we are in a difficult situation and people say, oh, why this happened to me, well, that happened to me, but why couldn't it happen to you? Because it happened to everyone. While we are in this life, we are going through many, many experiences, and some of them are very painful. I find that sometimes when you see people who actually can face the sadness, the problem and the pain with courage, is really inspiring. My mother, she was very, very ill, and she suffered quite a lot towards the end of her life, but she never, never once she said, oh, why is God doing this to me? Why? Never. She would always say, let's pray for me, pray together, and she actually died praying. She started saying the Lord's Prayer and she died. And I think sometimes, and that's, in other people want to have euthanasia laws because they don't want to suffer, all sorts of things. That's not created by God. It is part of our experience of life on earth as a spirit in evolution. We need to go, as I think you mentioned that before, Stevan, about the experience that we have to go through in this life, So God is there to help us. We always in his presence. He never left us. He's with us all the time. And I think we needed to have courage and a little humility. And it's not easy, of course not. We're going through a problem. We want solution. We don't want to think about it. But we have to have courage in those times. And because it's the nature of life on earth at the stage that we find ourselves in. And our pain sometimes will allow us to have empathy to other people, isn't it? So God is always merciful, and He did not create evil is a product of human mistakes. So that's all. It's just so.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, my dear. Thank you, everyone. Good discussion today. By the way, it was Rodrigo who gave us the topic
The
today. So thank
suggestion.
you. Thank you for the
Thank you,
suggestion, Rodrigo.
Rodrigo.
Is very good. Thank you. And last next next our I'm trying to open here my PowerPoint, but something is not open, so I cannot share uh, my PowerPoint. But some announcements here. This Sunday 21st, we will have our friend Charles on the part two of the episode from Camille Famarion. I don't know all these balloons here, huh? Yeah. Yeah. Is it? Celebration for you. Is it? Yeah. They're waiting for you, my friend. So this Saturday, this Sunday, 21st, we will talk, and the third part is the following Sunday on the 28th. Okay. Um, and our topic for next week, it is health and spirituality, a link between science and religion. Health and spirituality, a link between science and religion. So next Saturday, 9 p.m., we'll be here. And I promise my PowerPoint will work and I can show the slides. Okay?
Mhm.
So thank you all. Thank you, Marco. Thank you, Luviem. Thank you, Tati. Thank you, Rodrigo. Thank you, Duktak. Thank you, Ana Beatriz. So thank you so much. I'll see you next week. Have a blessed week. And once again, thank you, Silvia. Merci, Charles.
Merci à vous.
Thank you very much. Have a blessed week, everyone. Bye bye. God
Bye bye.
bless.